Though the White House says, they've done everything they can.
Right.
They've been trying to deal with the Republicans. They put out specific budget cuts.
They did in December, still on the table. Yeah.
Republicans, of course, I guess, Bob, Republicans also passed a couple of bills.
And back in May, they passed a bill, and then in December, they passed a similar sequester replacement bill. But the White House says it's not balanced. It cuts too much of the food stamp programs, cuts Medicaid. The Republicans say at least we put something on the table. What are Senate Democrats doing? The problem Republicans have is in the cloakroom right now on Capitol Hill. Republicans are nervous. They're telling me that they don't want the sequester to happen. They represent the defense industry, military people.
So what are they going to do? So the president has talked about chain CPI. Now, of course, Harry Reid had him take it off the table, but he talked about chain CPI, and you get the sense, he talked to Al Sharpton and some others, saying he's going to put that back on the table. If the president puts chain CPI on the table.
I think the time frame is so short, though. I mean, this March 1st deadline is coming up, and if you want to have a real discussion about entitlement reform or tax reform, good luck trying to do it in a week.
Oh, so we're in another situation where we have a fake deadline, or a deadline that we're up against that nothing will be able to get done because there's not enough time to really do something substantive?
That's the story of Washington in January, February, probably March.
The can down the road.
So at what point do they just sit down and look at the deals that both sides have put on the table?
No one wants to make a deal. I mean, the president calls Boehner and McConnell yesterday, and both sides say nothing happened. The impasse continues. This is Washington today. Both sides don't really want to budge at all.
What way is that?
Well, I mean, I think Obama. I mean, I think basically, I mean, the Republicans have a set of internal politics where they think for their internal political purposes, for Mitch McConnell's purposes in Kentucky, it doesn't make sense for them to make a deal. Whereas Obama's looking at the broader politics and thinks he doesn't have to make a deal because he thinks he can that he can win again.
Well, you look at the numbers. I mean, the polls are certainly all on the president's side.
Yeah.
But don't you get a sense though that he'd still? I mean, the president understands if he doesn't get a deal, and you have these massive cuts, you've got an economy that's upside down right now. I don't think he wants to take that risk, does he?
Well, I mean, I think, I mean, Mika was talking about fake deadlines. The economy's not going to collapse on March 2nd. Yeah. I mean, the fiscal cliff was not a cliff. We went over it and nothing happened. I think the White House and certainly the American people, I think, don't buy the idea that some massive catastrophe will strike at this latest fake deadline after at the last fake deadline nothing happened. If you've been ignoring the entire fiscal cliff conversation, you kind of won because actually you didn't miss anything. And I think the public at this point thinks that's what's going on right now, too.
So, Bob, the White House doesn't want sequestration. I mean,
both sides don't want it.
I've been talking to them very recently, and they want to avoid it. They think it's terrible for the economy. You're saying Republicans in the cloakroom don't want it.
They don't want it at all. But the problem for Republicans is this. So they felt like they got burned during that fiscal cliff. They let some of the Bush tax cuts expire, and they felt like they can't go to conservatives now and even entertain the idea of revenue or tax hikes. So what they're saying is we can't move on taxes. So what does the president expect us to do? We passed our plan. We have no movement. We're in a corner now with conservatives and Republicans. We promised the tax question's finished. So there's just no chance of a deal that includes revenue, and that's all the White House wants.
But the White House would say in response they didn't get burned. They walked away from the spending cut side of the deal that was on the table and just took the tax part.
Good luck making that argument inside of a Republican conference meeting. I mean, that's a fair argument to make if you're looking at the big picture. But Republicans look at the internal politics right now in the party. They can't move on taxes. They already felt like they did too much on taxes during the fiscal cliff. So I just don't see how this gets resolved. I think the sequester happens, and somehow in the appropriations process down the line, they try to fund some of the defense funding again. Right. But beyond that, I don't know what happens.
What do you think, Ben?
I mean,